"Listen for just one night and wake up a different person," is a sentence that immediately captures attention. It speaks directly to a quiet desire that almost everyone carries inside. The desire to change quickly. The desire to escape old habits without struggle. The desire to become stronger, more confident, and more successful without going through a long, painful process. In a world where everything is becoming faster, people naturally begin to expect the same speed from personal growth. Messages like this spread widely because they offer hope in its simplest form. They suggest that transformation does not require years of effort, but only a single decision and a single night of listening. But real life does not operate on shortcuts alone. This does not mean the idea is completely false. It means it is incomplete. There is a difference between a spark and a fire. One night of listening can be a spark. It can shift your mindset slightly. It can plant a new idea inside your mind. It can interrupt negative thinking patterns and introduce a new direction. But a spark by itself does not sustain change. Without action, repetition, and awareness, it fades away. The human mind is complex and powerful. It responds to what it experiences repeatedly. Thoughts that are heard again and again begin to feel familiar. What feels familiar starts to feel true. What feels true begins to influence behavior. This is how transformation actually happens. When you listen to something while falling asleep, your brain is moving into a state where it becomes less resistant and more receptive. This is why many people believe that nighttime listening has a special effect. In some ways it does. It can lower mental resistance, can allow ideas to settle more easily. But even then, one night is not enough to completely reshape your identity. The real value of such listening lies in consistency. It lies in using it as a tool rather than treating it as a miracle. When combined with conscious effort, daily decisions, and real-world actions, it can become a powerful support system for change. Many people misunderstand motivation. They believe it is something that transforms them instantly. In reality, motivation is a starting point. It is a push, not a solution. It can guide you, but it cannot replace discipline. It can inspire you, but it cannot act for you. This is why some people listen to powerful messages and feel a temporary high, while others use the same messages to build lasting change. The difference is not in the audio. The difference is in how it is used. This work is not about selling the idea of overnight success. It is about understanding the truth behind the message and using it in a way that actually improves your life. It is about separating illusion from reality while still holding on to hope. Because change is possible. People do transform. Lives do improve. But it happens through a process that is both simple and demanding. It requires patience, awareness, and repetition. Think of this as the beginning of a journey rather than a final solution. The night you decide to listen can be important, not because it will change everything instantly, but because it can mark the moment you choose a different direction. That choice matters more than any audio. If you approach this idea with the right understanding, you will not be disappointed. Instead, you will gain something far more valuable than a quick transformation. You will gain a method that works with your mind rather than against it. A method that builds change step by step until one day you look back and realize that you truly have become a different person, not because of one night alone, but because that night became the starting point of something you continued, and that is where real transformation begins. Chapter 1. The Illusion of Overnight Transformation. Idea of becoming a completely different person after just one night is deeply appealing. It feels simple. It feels effortless. It feels like a solution to years of struggle compressed into a single moment. This is why such messages spread so quickly. They offer hope without demanding patience. But the human mind does not change in a single leap. It changes in layers. When someone listens to motivational audio, While sleeping, they are not rewriting their entire personality overnight. What they are doing is exposing their mind to new patterns of thought. These patterns do not instantly replace old ones. Instead, they begin to compete with them. Your current thoughts, beliefs, and habits have been built over time. Some of them have been repeated for years. They have become familiar and automatic. One night of listening cannot erase that history. What it can do is introduce a new direction. This is where many people become disappointed. They expect a complete shift. When they wake up and still feel like themselves, they assume nothing worked. In reality, something may have started, but it is too small to notice, yet real transformation is subtle in the beginning. It does not announce itself with dramatic changes. It begins quietly. A slightly different thought. A small shift in reaction. A moment of awareness where before there was none. These are the early signs that something is changing. The problem is that most people overlook these small changes because they are waiting for something big. The idea of overnight transformation is not entirely useless. It can serve as a powerful trigger. It can push someone to take action when they would otherwise remain stuck. It can create emotional intensity, which helps new ideas enter the mind more easily. But it becomes harmful when taken literally. Believing in instant change can lead to a cycle of hope and disappointment. A person feels excited, listens once, expects everything to improve, then feels frustrated when nothing major happens. This frustration often leads them to quit before real progress begins. Understanding the truth breaks this cycle. Change works through repetition. The brain strengthens connections that are used frequently. Thoughts that are repeated become easier to access. Actions that are practiced become habits. Over time, these habits shape identity. Listening for one night is like opening a door. But walking through that door requires continued effort. Another important point is that passive listening alone is rarely enough. Even if the mind absorbs some ideas during sleep, those ideas need to be supported by conscious action. Without action, they remain abstract. They do not translate into real-life change. For example, someone may listen to messages about confidence, but still avoid situations that require confidence. In that case, the old pattern remains stronger because it is reinforced by behavior. The new idea has no support. On the other hand, if that same person listens regularly and also begins to take small risks during the day, the message becomes aligned with action. This alignment is what creates lasting change. The illusion of overnight transformation comes from a misunderstanding of how powerful the mind is. People assume that because the mind is powerful, it should change instantly. In reality, its true power lies in consistency. It is not what you do once that defines you. It is what you repeat. When you accept this, you stop chasing shortcuts and start building something real. You become more patient with yourself. You begin to notice small improvements. You understand that feeling the same after one night does not mean failure. It simply means the process has begun. Example 1. A young man wants to become disciplined. He listens to a powerful audio before sleeping and expects to wake up with complete control over his habits. The next day, he still feels lazy and distracted. He assumes the method is useless and gives up. Another person with the same goal listens every night for several weeks while also setting small daily goals. At first, the changes are minor. He completes one task, then 2, then 3. Over time, discipline becomes easier because it has been practiced. The transformation is real, but it is gradual. Example 2. A woman struggles with negative thinking. She listens to positive affirmations one night and hopes her mindset will completely shift. When negative thoughts return the next day, she feels defeated. Another woman listens consistently and also starts observing her thoughts during the day. Each time a negative thought appears, she challenges it and replaces it with a more balanced one. After some time, her thinking pattern changes. Not instantly, but steadily. The difference in both cases is not the audio itself. It is the understanding of how change works. Overnight, transformation is a powerful idea, but it is only the beginning of the story. The real story is what happens after that first night. Whether you continue or stop, whether you act or remain passive, whether you choose consistency over quick results. That is what determines who you become. Chapter 2. How the subconscious mind actually works. To understand why listening for one night does not instantly transform a person, you must first understand how the subconscious mind functions. Many people use the word subconscious as if it is something magical or mysterious that can be controlled instantly. In reality, it follows clear patterns and responds to specific kinds of input over time. The subconscious mind is not a separate brain with unlimited power to change everything overnight. It is a system that stores repeated experiences, thoughts, and behaviors. It learns through exposure and reinforcement. Whatever you think, feel, and do again and again slowly becomes part of this system. Your daily life is mostly controlled by this hidden layer. The way you react to stress, the way you speak to yourself, the habits you follow without thinking, all of these are guided by patterns stored beneath conscious awareness. This is why change can feel difficult. You are not just changing a single decision. You are changing a system that has been built through repetition. When you listen to something while falling asleep, your brain begins to move from an active thinking state into a more relaxed and receptive state. In this condition, your critical thinking is reduced and your mind becomes less resistant to new ideas. This is why nighttime listening can feel powerful. It allows certain messages to enter without being immediately rejected. However, being receptive is not the same as being permanently changed. Subconscious does not accept something as truth simply because it heard it once. It accepts what it experiences repeatedly and what is supported by action and emotion. If a message is heard once and then ignored during the day, it has very little impact. But if that same message is heard many times and is supported by real-life behavior, it begins to take root. Is the key principle that most people overlook. The subconscious is shaped by three main forces: repetition, emotional intensity, and consistency of behavior. When these three are aligned, change becomes much easier. When they are disconnected, change becomes weak or temporary. Repetition makes a thought familiar. Emotional intensity gives it importance. Behavior proves it to be real. Listening for one night may create a small emotional effect. You may feel inspired or hopeful, but without repetition, that feeling fades. Without behavior, the message has no evidence to support it. The subconscious then returns to its old patterns, because those patterns are stronger and more established. Another important aspect is that the subconscious does not easily distinguish between what you imagine and what you experience if both are repeated enough. This is why visualization and affirmations can be helpful when used correctly. But again, they require consistency. One night of imagining a new version of yourself will not override years of opposite experience. Think of the subconscious as a set of pathways in your mind. Each time you think a certain thought or perform a certain action, you strengthen a pathway. Old pathways are strong because they have been used many times. New pathways are weak at first. They only become strong through repeated use. Listening while sleeping can begin to form a new pathway, but it is only the first step. During the day, you must walk that path through your actions and decisions. Otherwise, it remains undeveloped. There is also the issue of contradiction. If you listen to messages about confidence at night, but spend your day engaging in self-doubt, your subconscious receives mixed signals. In such cases, the stronger pattern usually wins, which is often the older one. To truly influence the subconscious, you must create alignment. What you hear, what you think, and what you do should move in the same direction. This alignment sends a clear message and allows new patterns to form more effectively. It is also important to understand that the subconscious protects what is familiar. Even if a habit is not helpful, it feels safe because it is known. Sudden change can feel uncomfortable or even threatening. This is another reason why overnight transformation rarely works. The mind resists drastic shifts but accepts gradual ones. When you approach change with patience, you reduce resistance. You allow the mind to adjust step by step. Each small success builds confidence and strengthens new patterns. Over time, these patterns become automatic, just like the old ones once were. Example: one person wants to believe they are capable and successful. They listen to affirmations one night that repeat this idea. The next day, they face a challenge and immediately think they will fail. The old pattern is stronger because it has been reinforced many times in the past. Another person listens to the same affirmations every night for several weeks. During the day, they also take small actions that support the belief, such as completing tasks and acknowledging progress. Gradually, their internal dialogue changes because the new idea is reinforced both mentally and through action. Example: a student wants to overcome fear of public speaking. They listen to calming and confidence-building audio one night before a presentation. The next day, they still feel anxious and assume nothing worked. Another student listens regularly and also practices speaking in small situations. Each time they speak, their confidence increases slightly. The repeated listening supports their mindset, while their actions provide real evidence. Over time, the fear reduces because the subconscious has been retrained through both input and experience. The subconscious mind is powerful, but it is not instant. It responds to patterns, not promises. It follows what is repeated, not what is wished for once. When you understand this, you stop expecting miracles and start building results. You begin to use tools like nighttime listening in a practical way, rather than relying on them as a complete solution. This understanding turns frustration into patience and hope into strategy. And once you have a strategy that works with your mind instead of against it, real transformation becomes not only possible, but predictable. Chapter 3. The Science of Repetition and Habit Formation. If there is one principle that explains real transformation more than anything else, it is repetition. Not intensity, not emotion, not a single moment of motivation, but repetition. The human mind and behavior are shaped by what is done again and again until it becomes automatic. People often underestimate how powerful repetition is because its effects are not immediately visible. It does not create dramatic change in a single moment. Instead, it works quietly in the background, building patterns that eventually define who you are. Every thought you repeat strengthens a mental pathway. Every action you repeat strengthens a behavioral pattern. Over time, these pathways and patterns become habits. And habits are what control most of your daily life. This is why one night of listening cannot create lasting change. It is not because the message is weak, but because it has not been repeated enough to compete with existing patterns. Your current habits did not appear overnight. They were formed through repeated experiences, often without your awareness. The way you respond to stress, the way you approach work, the way you talk to yourself, all of these are the result of repetition over time. To change your life, you do not need a completely new personality. You need new patterns. And new patterns are built through consistent repetition. When you listen to something repeatedly, especially before sleep, you are introducing a pattern into your mind. At first, it feels unfamiliar. It may even feel unnatural or unrealistic. But as you continue to hear it, the idea becomes more familiar. What is familiar starts to feel possible. What feels possible becomes easier to act upon. This is how repetition influences belief. Beliefs are not fixed truths. They are conclusions formed from repeated thoughts and experiences. If you repeatedly tell yourself that you are not capable, your mind accepts it as a belief because it has heard it many times. If you begin to introduce a different message and repeat it consistently, you begin to challenge that belief. However, repetition alone is not enough if it is disconnected from action. Habits are formed not only by thinking, but by doing. When you perform an action repeatedly, your brain begins to automate it. This reduces the need for conscious effort. What once felt difficult becomes natural. This is why combining listening with daily behavior is so important. The message you hear at night should be supported by the actions you take during the day. This creates a loop where thought and behavior reinforce each other. At the beginning, this process requires effort. You have to remind yourself to act differently. You have to push against old habits. This can feel uncomfortable because your brain prefers what is familiar. But with repetition, the discomfort decreases and the new behavior becomes easier. There is also a concept of momentum. Small repeated actions build momentum over time. The first step may feel difficult. The second becomes slightly easier. As you continue, the process gains speed. Eventually, what once required effort begins to happen automatically. Many people fail because they stop before reaching this stage. They repeat something for a short period, then quit when results are not immediate. They do not realize that they were close to building momentum. Consistency is what separates temporary motivation from lasting change. Listening for one night may give you a sense of possibility. Listening for many nights while taking consistent action builds a new reality. The difference is not in the content, but in the repetition. Another important factor is patience. Repetition requires time. The brain does not instantly replace old patterns with new ones. It gradually weakens unused pathways and strengthens new ones. This process cannot be rushed, but it can be directed. When you understand this, you stop looking for quick fixes. You begin to focus on what you can repeat daily. You shift from thinking about big results to focusing on small, consistent actions. This mindset is more realistic and more powerful. Instead of asking whether one night will change your life, you begin to ask what you can do every day that will lead to change. This question leads to progress because it aligns with how the mind actually works. Example 1: a person wants to wake up early and become more productive. They listen to a motivational audio one night and feel inspired. The next morning they wake up early, but the following day they return to their old routine. The single experience was not enough to form a habit. Another person listens every night and sets a consistent wake-up time. At first, it feels difficult, but they continue for several weeks. Gradually, waking up early becomes easier because their body and mind adapt to the repeated pattern. What was once effort becomes routine. Example 2: a person wants to develop a positive mindset. They listen to affirmations one time and expect their thinking to change. When negative thoughts return, they feel discouraged. Another person listens daily and also practices replacing negative thoughts whenever they notice them. Each time they do this, they reinforce a new pattern. Over time, positive thinking becomes more natural because it has been repeated consistently. Repetition is not exciting in the beginning, but it is powerful in the long run. It turns ideas into habits and habits into identity. When you commit to repetition, you stop relying on a single moment to change your life. Instead, you build change step by step until it becomes a part of who you are. That is the real science behind transformation. Not a single night, but many nights combined with many days of consistent action. Chapter 4: Why most people fail with motivation. Motivation feels powerful in the moment. It creates energy, excitement, and a sense that change is finally possible. When someone listens to a strong message, especially at night, they may feel as if their life is about to transform. For a short time, everything seems clear and achievable. But then something happens. The feeling fades. This is where most people fail. Not because they are incapable, and not because the message had no value, but because they misunderstand what motivation is supposed to do. Motivation is not designed to last forever. It is a temporary emotional state. It is a push, not a system. It can start movement, but it cannot sustain it on its own. Many people treat motivation as if it should carry them all the way to their goal. They listen once, feel inspired, and expect that feeling to remain with them. When it disappears, they assume something went wrong. In reality, nothing went wrong. The feeling simply did what it always does. It passed. This misunderstanding creates a cycle. A person feels motivated, takes a small step, then loses energy and stops. After some time, they seek another source of motivation and repeat the process. They move in short bursts, but never build consistency. This is why one night of listening rarely leads to lasting change. It creates a strong emotional moment, but without a structure to support it, the effect disappears. Another reason people fail is that they rely only on how they feel. When they feel motivated, they act. When they do not feel motivated, they stop. This creates inconsistency because emotions are not stable. They change depending on mood, environment, and circumstances. Real progress requires action, even when motivation is low. This is where discipline becomes important. Discipline is not about forcing yourself in a harsh way. It is about creating a system that allows you to act regardless of how you feel. It reduces the dependence on temporary emotions and replaces it with consistent behavior. Motivation can help you start, but discipline helps you continue. There is also the issue of unrealistic expectations. When someone hears a message like "wake up a different person," they imagine a complete transformation. They expect to feel confident, focused, and driven immediately. When reality does not match this expectation, they feel disappointed. This disappointment can be stronger than the original motivation. It creates doubt and frustration. A person may begin to believe that change is not possible for them, when in fact they simply expected it to happen too quickly. Another factor is passive consumption. Listening to motivational content can feel productive, but it is not the same as taking action. A person may spend hours listening and still avoid doing the work required to change their situation. This creates an illusion of progress. They feel as if they are improving, but their real life remains the same. To break this pattern, you must connect motivation to action. Every time you feel inspired, you should translate that feeling into something practical. Even a small step is enough. The important part is that the energy is used rather than wasted. Over time, this creates a habit of acting on motivation instead of just experiencing it. Consistency is what turns temporary motivation into lasting results. When you repeat actions regardless of how you feel, you begin to build stability. Your progress no longer depends on emotional highs. It becomes part of your routine. Another important point is self-awareness. You need to recognize when you are relying too much on motivation. If you find yourself constantly searching for new inspiration without taking action, it is a sign that you are stuck in the cycle. Breaking this cycle requires a shift in mindset. Instead of asking how to stay motivated, you begin to ask how to stay consistent. This question leads to better strategies because it focuses on behavior rather than emotion. Motivation is still valuable. It can remind you why you started. It can help you push through difficult moments. But it should not be your only tool. Think of it as a spark rather than a fuel source. Example: a person listens to a powerful motivational audio at night and feels completely energized. The next day, they make a plan to change their life. After a few days, their motivation drops and they stop following the plan. They wait until they feel inspired again before taking action. This pattern repeats, and they make little progress. Another person listens to the same audio, but immediately creates a simple routine. They decide on a few actions to repeat daily regardless of how they feel. Even when motivation fades, they continue. Over time, their progress becomes stable because it is based on consistency, not emotion. Example: 2A student feels motivated after listening to positive messages and decides to study harder. For 2 days they work intensely, but then lose interest and return to old habits. They believe they need more motivation to continue. Another student uses the same motivation to set a fixed study schedule. They study for a set amount of time each day, even when they do not feel like it. The initial motivation helped them start, but their routine keeps them going. As a result, they improve steadily. Most people do not fail because they lack motivation. They fail because they rely on it too much. When you understand the limits of motivation, you begin to use it correctly. You allow it to start the process, but you do not depend on it to finish it. You build systems, habits, and routines that continue even when the feeling is gone. This shift changes everything. You stop chasing temporary highs and start building something that lasts. You move from emotional bursts to steady progress. And this is what turns the idea of change from a moment into a reality. Chapter 5. Turning night listening into real-life change listening. At night can be useful, but only if it is used correctly. Many people treat it as a solution, when in reality, it is a tool. A tool can be powerful, but only when it is applied with intention and followed by action. The difference between someone who changes and someone who stays the same is not what they listen to, but what they do with it. When you listen before sleep, your mind is entering a relaxed state. In this state, it becomes easier for ideas to pass through without strong resistance. This makes nighttime a good moment to introduce positive messages. But these messages are only the beginning. They are like instructions that need to be carried out during the day. If you listen and then ignore those ideas in your daily life, nothing changes. To turn night listening into real change, you need to create a connection between what you hear and what you do. This connection is what transforms words into results. The first step is clarity. You need to know what you are trying to change. Listening without a clear intention leads to scattered results. Your mind receives information, but does not know where to apply it. When you are clear about your goal, the message becomes more focused and easier to act upon. The second step is repetition. Listening once creates awareness, but listening consistently builds familiarity. Over time, the message starts to feel normal rather than new. This reduces resistance and makes it easier to accept. The third step is immediate action. After listening, you should identify at least one small action that reflects the message. This action should be simple enough to perform without hesitation. The purpose is not to achieve perfection, but to create alignment. Alignment means that your thoughts and actions are moving in the same direction. When you act on what you hear, you send a signal to your mind that the message is important. This strengthens the pattern and increases the chances of repetition. Without action, the message remains passive and weak. Another important element is consistency in daily behavior. Night listening cannot compensate for negative patterns during the day. If you spend your day reinforcing the opposite of what you heard at night, the old pattern will remain stronger. For example, if you listen to messages about discipline but continue to avoid responsibility, your actions will override the message. But if you begin to take small responsibilities, even when it feels uncomfortable, the message gains support. This is how real change is built. There is also a need for patience. Results from this process are not immediate. They develop over time as patterns are repeated and reinforced. Expecting quick transformation creates frustration and may lead you to stop before progress becomes visible. Instead of looking for dramatic change, focus on small improvements. Notice slight differences in your thinking or behavior. These small changes are signs that the process is working. Another key factor is awareness during the day. Listening at night prepares your mind, but awareness during the day allows you to apply what you have learned. You need to observe your thoughts and reactions and make conscious adjustments when necessary. This is where many people fail. They rely completely on passive listening and do not engage actively with their own behavior. As a result, the impact remains limited. Turning listening into change requires participation. You also need to accept that discomfort is part of the process. When you begin to act differently, it may feel unnatural. This is because you are stepping outside familiar patterns. The mind may resist and try to pull you back into old habits. This resistance is normal. It does not mean you are failing. It means you are changing. If you continue despite discomfort, the new pattern becomes stronger and the resistance decreases. Over time, what once felt difficult becomes natural. Night listening can support this process by reminding you of your action and reinforcing your intention. It keeps your focus aligned and reduces the chances of returning completely to old patterns, but it cannot replace effort. Real-life change happens in your actions, your decisions, and your consistency. The audio is a guide, not a replacement for work. Example 1. A person listens to messages about becoming more productive at night. The next day, they feel slightly more focused, but do not change their routine. They continue to waste time and avoid important tasks. After some time, they conclude that listening does not work. Another person listens to the same messages and decides to act on them. They start by completing one important task each day. It is a small step, but they repeat it consistently. Over time, their productivity increases because their actions support the message they hear. Example 2. A person listens to confidence-building audio while sleeping, but avoids social interaction during the day. Their behavior contradicts the message, so their confidence does not improve. Another person listens regularly and also challenges themselves to speak in small situations. Each action supports the idea of confidence. Gradually, they become more comfortable because their mind and behavior are aligned. The power of night listening is not in a single moment. It is in how it is used over time. When combined with clarity, repetition, action, and awareness, it becomes a strong support for transformation. Without these elements, it remains only a temporary experience. The choice is not whether to listen or not. The choice is whether you will use what you hear to change how you live. That is what turns a simple night into the beginning of something real. Chapter 6. The role of identity in lasting change. Real transformation is not just about changing actions. It is about changing identity. The way you see yourself influences everything you do. Your habits, your decisions, and your limits are all connected to your identity. Most people try to change their life by focusing only on behavior. They try to act differently without changing how they see themselves. This creates conflict. Their actions move in one direction, while their identity pulls them back in another. This is why change often feels temporary. If someone sees themselves as lazy, they may act productively for a short time after listening to motivational content. But when the initial energy fades, their behavior returns to what matches their identity. The mind always tries to stay consistent with how it defines itself. Listening at night can introduce new ideas, but unless those ideas become part of your identity, they do not last. Identity is built through repeated evidence. What you do consistently becomes what you believe about yourself. If you repeatedly act with discipline, you begin to see yourself as a disciplined person. If you repeatedly avoid responsibility, you strengthen the identity of being careless or unmotivated. This is why small actions matter more than big intentions. Each small action is a vote for the type of person you are becoming. One action does not define you, but repeated actions create a pattern. That pattern becomes identity. When you listen to messages about becoming confident or focused, you are being introduced to a new identity. But your mind will not fully accept it until it sees proof. This proof comes from your behavior. The process works in both directions. Your identity influences your actions, and your actions reinforce your identity. To create lasting change, you need to use this loop intentionally. Start by choosing the identity you want to build. This should be clear and realistic. Instead of focusing only on outcomes, focus on the type of person who achieves those outcomes. Then begin to act in small ways that match that identity. Listening at night can support this by reminding you of who you are trying to become. It keeps the idea active in your mind and reduces the influence of old patterns. But the real shift happens when you act according to that identity during the day. At first, it may feel uncomfortable. Acting like a disciplined or confident person, when you do not fully believe, it can feel unnatural. This is because your current identity has been reinforced for a long time. But if you continue to act in alignment with the new identity, the feeling begins to change. What was once unfamiliar becomes normal. The mind updates its definition based on repeated evidence. This is the point where change becomes stable. Another important aspect is language. The way you speak about yourself influences your identity. If you constantly describe yourself in negative terms, you reinforce that image. If you begin to use language that reflects growth and effort, you create space for a new identity. This does not mean ignoring reality. It means focusing on direction rather than limitation. For example, instead of saying, "You are not disciplined," you can recognize that you are building discipline. This small shift keeps your identity flexible and open to change. Night listening often includes affirmations that describe a desired identity. These can be helpful, but only if they are supported by action. Without action, they may feel empty or unrealistic. With action, they become a reflection of reality. Identity change is not immediate. It develops gradually as evidence accumulates. The more you act in alignment with the new identity, the stronger it becomes. Over time, it starts to feel natural and automatic. This is when transformation becomes lasting. Example 1: a person wants to become a focused and productive individual. They listen to messages about success at night, but still see themselves as someone who procrastinates. During the day, they continue to delay tasks because it matches their identity. The listening has little effect because their behavior reinforces the old self-image. Another person with the same goal begins to shift their identity. They decide to see themselves as someone who takes action. They start with small tasks and complete them consistently. Each completed task becomes evidence. Over time, they begin to believe in this new identity because it is supported by their actions. Example 2: a person wants to become confident. They listen to affirmations that describe confidence, but internally they still believe they are not capable. They avoid situations that challenge them, which reinforces their old identity. Another person listens to the same affirmations and also begins to act differently. They speak up in small situations and gradually increase their exposure. Each action supports the idea of confidence. Over time, their identity shifts because their behavior provides consistent proof. Lasting change is not about what you do once. It is about who you become through what you repeatedly do. Night listening can introduce a new version of yourself, but it cannot make it real on its own. You make it real through your actions, your choices, and your consistency. When your identity changes, your behavior follows naturally. And when your behavior supports your identity, the change becomes permanent. This is how you move from temporary motivation to a lasting transformation that stays with you long after the initial inspiration fades. Chapter 7: The Power of Environment and Daily Influence. Most people focus only on what they think and what they listen to, but they ignore something just as powerful: their environment. Your environment silently shapes your behavior every day. It influences your decisions, your habits, and even your identity without you fully realizing it. You can listen to the most powerful message at night, but if your environment during the day constantly pulls you in the opposite direction, change becomes difficult. Environment is not just a physical space. It includes the people around you, the content you consume, your daily routine, and the situations you place yourself in. All of these factors send signals to your mind about what is normal and expected. The mind adapts to what it sees repeatedly. If you are surrounded by distraction, negativity, or lack of discipline, your mind begins to accept that as the standard. Even if you listen to positive messages at night, the stronger influence will often be what you experience throughout the day. This is why many people feel inspired at night, but lose that feeling quickly after waking up. They return to the same environment that created their old habits. To create real change, your environment must support your intention. This does not mean you need to completely change your life overnight. Small adjustments can have a strong impact. When your surroundings begin to align with your goals, your behavior becomes easier to control. For example, if you want to become more focused, reducing distractions in your environment is more effective than relying only on motivation. If you want to think more positively, limiting exposure to negative influences can support that shift. Night listening works best when it is reinforced by your environment. The message you hear should not exist only in your headphones. It should be reflected in how you live your day. Another important part of environment is people. The people you spend time with influence your mindset and behavior. Their attitudes, habits, and expectations can either support your growth or slow it down. This influence is often subtle, but very strong. If you are around people who constantly doubt themselves or avoid effort, it becomes easier for you to do the same. If you are around people who take action and improve themselves, it becomes easier to follow that pattern. This does not mean you must remove everyone from your life. It means you should be aware of influence and make conscious choices about who and what you allow to shape your thinking. Content is also part of your environment. What you watch, read, and listen to during the day matters. If your mind is filled with distraction or negativity for hours, a short period of positive listening at night will struggle to compete. Consistency across your environment strengthens change. Another key idea is friction. Friction refers to how easy or difficult it is to perform a behavior. Your environment can increase or decrease friction. If something is easy to access, you are more likely to do it. If something requires effort to begin, you are less likely to follow through. You can use this principle to your advantage. Make positive actions easier and negative actions harder. Place tools for good habits within reach. Remove or reduce access to distractions. These small changes reduce the need for constant willpower. When your environment supports your goals, discipline becomes easier. You rely less on motivation and more on structure. Night listening can help set your intention, but your environment determines how easily that intention turns into action. If both are aligned, progress becomes smoother. If they are not aligned, you will constantly feel resistance. Awareness is the first step. Look at your daily surroundings and notice what they are encouraging you to do. Are they supporting your growth or maintaining your current state? Once you see this clearly, you can begin to adjust. Example 1: a person listens to messages about focus and productivity at night, but spends the day in a highly distracting environment. Their phone is always nearby, notifications are constant, and their workspace is unorganized. Even with strong intention, they struggle to stay focused because their environment makes distraction easy. Another person listens to the same messages, but changes their environment. They create a clean workspace, limit notifications, and set specific times for focused work. As a result, their behavior begins to match the message they hear, because their environment supports it. Example 2. A person listens to positive and confident messages, but spends most of their time around people who complain and avoid growth. Over time, they find it difficult to maintain a positive mindset because their environment reinforces negativity. Another person listens to similar messages and also seeks out more supportive influences. They spend time with people who encourage progress or consume content that reinforces growth. This strengthens the message and makes it easier to maintain a positive direction. Your environment is always shaping you, whether you are aware of it or not. Night listening can guide your mind, but your environment shapes your daily reality. When both work together, change becomes much more natural. You do not need to rely on a single moment to transform your life. You can design a system that supports you every day. And when your environment begins to reflect the person you want to become, staying consistent no longer feels like a struggle. It becomes the new normal. Chapter 8. Patience, Consistency, and the Reality of Time. One of the biggest challenges in personal change is not effort, but time. People are often willing to try new things, listen to powerful messages, and take action for a short period. But when results do not appear quickly, they begin to lose belief in the process. This is where patience becomes essential. The idea of waking up as a completely different person in one night creates an expectation that change should be fast and obvious. When reality does not match this expectation, frustration begins. Many people stop, not because the method failed, but because they did not give it enough time to work. Time is not an obstacle to transformation. It is a requirement. Every meaningful change in life follows a process. Whether it is building confidence, improving discipline, or changing mindset, the pattern is the same. Small actions repeated over time create gradual progress. This progress may not be visible at first, but it accumulates. At the beginning, change feels slow. You may not notice clear results. Your thoughts may still feel the same. Your habits may still pull you back. This stage is where most people quit because it feels like nothing is happening. But something is happening. Under the surface, patterns are shifting. Old habits are being challenged. New pathways are being formed. The problem is that these changes are subtle and require patience to recognize. Consistency is what allows these small changes to grow. When you repeat a behavior or thought regularly, you are investing in a long-term result. Each repetition may seem small, but together they create momentum. Over time, this momentum becomes strong enough to produce visible change. This is why one night of listening cannot transform your life, but many nights combined with consistent action can. There is also an important concept known as delayed results. Many actions do not produce immediate outcomes. You may put in effort for days or weeks without seeing a clear difference. Then suddenly progress becomes noticeable. This delay can be misleading. It may feel like your effort was wasted, but in reality, it was building beneath the surface. When the result finally appears, it is the outcome of consistent work over time. Understanding this helps you stay committed even when progress is not obvious. Another challenge is comparison. People often compare their progress to others and feel discouraged if they do not see the same results. This creates unnecessary pressure and reduces patience. Every person starts from a different point and follows a different path. Comparing timelines only creates frustration. Your focus should be on your own consistency. Even small improvements matter. If you are slightly better than you were yesterday, you are moving in the right direction. These small steps may not feel significant in the moment, but over time, they create a large difference. Patience does not mean doing nothing. It means continuing to act without expecting immediate results. Consistency does not mean perfection. It means continuing even when you are not at your best. There will be days when you feel motivated and days when you do not. There will be moments of progress and moments of setback. This is part of the process. What matters is that you return to your actions and continue. Night listening can support patience by reminding you of your goal and reinforcing your direction. It keeps your mind aligned even when progress feels slow, but it cannot replace the need for consistent effort over time. The reality is simple, but often ignored. Change takes time. When you accept this, you remove unnecessary pressure. You stop expecting instant results and start focusing on steady progress. This shift makes the process more sustainable because you are no longer disappointed by normal delays. Instead of asking why you are not different after one night, you begin to ask whether you are consistent over many days. This question leads to real growth. Example 1: a person listens to motivational audio for a few nights and expects to see a major change in their habits. When they do not notice clear improvement, they stop and assume it is not working. Their effort ends before results have time to appear. Another person listens consistently for several weeks and combines it with small daily actions. At first, they notice very little difference, but they continue. After some time, their habits begin to shift and progress becomes visible. The result feels sudden, but it is built on consistent effort over time. Example 2: a student wants to improve their focus and begins listening to positive messages at night. After a few days, they still feel distracted and believe they are not improving. They become discouraged and return to old patterns. Another student follows the same practice but remains patient. They accept that improvement will take time. They continue listening and practicing focus daily. Gradually, their ability to concentrate improves. The change is not immediate, but it becomes strong because it is built consistently. Patience and consistency are not exciting, but they are reliable. They turn small actions into meaningful results. They allow your efforts to grow instead of fading away. They create a foundation that supports long-term change. One night can start the process, but time and consistency are what complete it. When you understand this, you stop chasing quick transformation and start building something that lasts. Chapter 9: Turning Knowledge into Action and Building a New Life. Direction at this stage. The most important truth becomes clear. Understanding ideas is not enough to change your life. Many people consume motivational content, listen to powerful messages at night, and even feel inspired, but their life remains the same. The missing link is action. Knowledge without action has no effect on reality. You can learn everything about discipline, confidence, focus, and success, but if you do not apply it in your daily behavior, nothing changes. The mind may feel motivated for a moment, but life is shaped by what you consistently do, not what you occasionally understand. This is where transformation becomes real or stops completely. Turning knowledge into action means making a decision to behave differently, even when it feels uncomfortable. It means taking what you hear during night listening and allowing it to influence your choices during the day. Without this connection, the process remains incomplete. Most people stop at inspiration. They listen, they feel energized, and they think they are changing. But inspiration is only the beginning. It is like receiving directions, but never starting the journey. Action is the movement that creates results. When you begin applying what you learn, even in small ways, something important happens. Your mind starts to treat the information as real. It stops being just an idea and becomes part of your lived experience. This is how belief is built. Belief does not come from repetition alone. It comes from evidence created through action. For example, if you listen to messages about being disciplined but do not complete your tasks, your mind does not accept the message fully. But if you start completing even small tasks regularly, your mind begins to update its understanding of who you are. This is how identity begins to shift. Action also creates momentum. The first step is always the hardest, because it goes against old patterns. But once you start, each step becomes easier. Progress builds on itself. This momentum is what carries you forward when motivation is low. Many people underestimate the power of small actions. They believe change requires something big or dramatic. But in reality, small, consistent actions are far more powerful than rare, large efforts. A single small action repeated daily is stronger than occasional bursts of effort. Night listening can support this process by keeping your intention alive. It reminds you of what you want to become and helps reduce mental resistance. But it cannot replace action. It can only support it. The real transformation happens when your daily behavior begins to reflect what you are hearing and thinking. There is also a need to simplify the process. Many people overcomplicate change by trying to do too much at once. They set large goals and then struggle to maintain them. When they fail, they feel discouraged and stop completely. A better approach is to focus on small, consistent behaviors that are easy to repeat. These behaviors should be simple enough that you can do them even on low motivation days. Over time, these small actions accumulate into significant change. Another important factor is self-reflection. You need to regularly observe your actions and ask whether they match the direction you want to move in. This awareness helps you adjust when you start slipping back into old patterns. Without reflection, people often repeat the same mistakes without realizing it. Change also requires letting go of old identities and behaviors that no longer serve you. This can be difficult because familiarity feels safe, even when it is not helpful. But growth requires stepping out of comfort and into uncertainty. Night listening can help prepare your mind for this shift by reinforcing new ideas. But the actual change happens when you act differently in real situations. There will always be resistance. Old habits do not disappear easily. They try to pull you back. This is normal. What matters is not avoiding resistance, but continuing despite it. Each time you choose action over hesitation, you strengthen the new direction. Example 1: a person listens to messages about productivity and feels motivated at night. The next day they plan to change, but do not take any action. Their life remains the same because there is no connection between learning and doing. Another person listens to the same messages and immediately chooses one small task to complete each day. They stay consistent even when motivation fades. Over time, their productivity increases because their actions reinforce the knowledge they received. Example 2: a student learns about focus and success through motivational content, but continues their old habits of distraction. Nothing changes because knowledge is not applied. Another student uses the same knowledge to make small adjustments in their study routine. They reduce distractions and practice focused study sessions regularly. Gradually, their performance improves because learning is supported by action. The difference between those who change and those who do not is not information. It is application. When you combine knowledge with consistent action, your life begins to shift in a real and measurable way. Night listening becomes meaningful only when it influences what you do during the day. This is the point where transformation stops being an idea and starts becoming reality. Not because of one night alone, but because one night turned into action. And action turned into change. Chapter 10. The final truth about becoming a different person. Idea of becoming a different person is powerful because it suggests total renewal. It implies that everything you struggle with can disappear and a completely new version of you can appear in its place. This is the dream behind the message. Listen for just one night and wake up a different person. But after understanding all the previous chapters, one truth becomes unavoidable. You do not become a different person in a single moment. You become a different person through a long chain of small changes that eventually make the old version of you irrelevant. Change is not a replacement. It is a transformation of patterns over time. What you call you is not fixed. It is a collection of habits, thoughts, reactions, memories, and repeated behaviors. When these elements begin to shift, your identity shifts with them. But this shift is gradual, not sudden. Night listening can play a role in this process, but only as a trigger or reminder. It can plant ideas, reinforce direction, and influence your mindset. However, it cannot carry the full responsibility of transformation. That responsibility belongs to your daily life. The final truth is simple. You become what you repeatedly do, not what you occasionally hear. If you repeatedly think in a certain way, act in a certain way, and respond in a certain way, that becomes your identity. Over time, the old identity weakens not because it is destroyed instantly, but because it is no longer reinforced. This is why lasting change feels like a natural evolution rather than a sudden switch. One day you notice that old habits no longer fit you. Old reactions feel distant. New behaviors feel normal. That is when you realize transformation has already happened quietly in the background. There is no single night that creates this change. There is only consistency across many nights and many days. The message that promises instant transformation is appealing, but it removes the most important part of growth, which is effort over time. Without effort, there is no structure for change to hold on to. Real transformation requires three things working together: awareness, repetition, and action. Awareness tells you what needs to change. Repetition builds familiarity. Action creates proof. When these three align, change becomes inevitable. Night listening can support awareness and repetition, but action must come from you in real situations. Without action, everything remains theoretical. The most important shift in thinking is this: stop expecting to wake up as a completely different person after one night. Instead, start noticing how each day you move slightly closer to a better version of yourself. That version is not created instantly. It is built piece by piece. There will be moments where you feel stuck and moments where you feel progress. Both are part of the same process. Growth is not a straight line. It is a combination of effort, failure, correction, and continuation. What matters most is not perfection, but direction. If your actions are moving you forward even slowly, you are changing. If you continue listening, learning, and applying what you learn in small ways, transformation is already happening. The danger is not in slow progress. The danger is in stopping, because progress feels slow. Many people quit before change becomes visible. They assume nothing is happening because results are not immediate. But real change often becomes visible only after it has already been happening for a long time. When you look back, you realize that you are no longer the same person who started. This is the real meaning of transformation. Not a sudden awakening, but a gradual becoming. Example 1: a person listens to motivational content for one night and expects a new identity to appear instantly. When nothing changes the next day, they lose belief and stop. Their life remains the same because the process was abandoned early. Another person listens regularly and slowly begins applying what they hear in small daily actions. Over time, their thinking changes, their habits improve, and their confidence grows. One day they realize they are no longer the same person they used to be. Example 2: a student believes that one night of listening will make them disciplined and focused. When they wake up and still feel distracted, they assume it did not work. Another student uses the same listening as a starting point and continues building discipline through daily effort. Step by step, their behavior changes. Eventually, discipline becomes part of their identity, not because of one moment, but because of consistent practice. The final truth is clear. You do not wake up a different person after one night. You become a different person after many nights of awareness, many days of action, and many small decisions that slowly reshape who you are. And when that process is complete, You do not feel like you changed overnight. You simply realize you are no longer the person you once were. Conclusion: from one night to a lifelong process. The idea behind "listen for just one night and wake up a different person" is powerful because it speaks to hope. It promises instant change in a world where people are often tired of struggle, delay, and repeated failure. But as we have explored throughout this journey, real transformation does not work like that. That one night can inspire you. One night can plant a thought. One night can give you direction. But one night cannot replace the process of becoming. Change in real life is built slowly through repetition, consistency, environment, identity, and action. Each chapter of your life is shaped by small decisions that seem insignificant at the moment, but become powerful when repeated over time. What you think, what you hear, what you do, and what you allow around you all combine to shape who you become. Night listening can be a helpful tool. It can guide your mind, reinforce positive direction, and support your intention to grow. But it only becomes meaningful when it is connected to your daily actions. Without action, it remains only an experience. With action, it becomes a starting point. The real message is not that change happens overnight. The real message is that change is always possible when you stay consistent long enough to let it happen. Many people underestimate the value of small progress. They expect dramatic results and overlook the quiet improvements that are actually building their future. But life rarely changes in sudden jumps. It changes in steps that are almost invisible in the beginning. If you continue even when progress feels slow, you begin to build something stronger than motivation. You build discipline. You build awareness. You build identity. And eventually, you build a new version of yourself that feels natural and stable. There is no final moment where you suddenly become a different person. Instead, there is a long process where you slowly stop being the old one. This is why patience matters. This is why consistency matters. This is why action matters more than inspiration alone. The truth is simple. You are always changing. The only question is whether you are changing in the direction you want or away from it. If you use what you learn, if you apply what you hear, and if you stay consistent even when it is difficult, then the idea behind this message becomes real in a different way. Not as an instant transformation, but as a gradual awakening. One day, you look back and realize that your habits are different, your thinking is different, and your life is different. Not because of one night, but because one night became a decision, and that decision became a habit, and that habit became your life. That is the real conclusion. You do not wake up a different person. You become one through time, effort, and persistence until the change feels like it was always part of you. The end.
Kindly subscribe to my channel.